Security. It's one of those things that's always, actually, it's never sexy to talk about. It's one of those challenges that we constantly have to face, especially our brave salespeople, when they go in the field and come to the events like this and they have to talk about security. Nobody cares. You may say that you care, but you don't. Trust me, we know. However, and they've asked me for a demo, so we're going to try a little experiment. It may not work, but I will say a few words, and if possible, for at least 1 minute, I would like everybody's attention, because I'm going to say a few words, and if somebody in the audience resonates with these words, I would like them to raise their hand, let me know that they're here, and then stay until the end of the presentation. So, Trandafir, Vipro, Ștefi, Cătălin, FBI, M3 Connect, OEBB, Mercure. Nimeni? Ok, mai spun unul. UNDT-SILO-02. Ok. Da, merci. So I'm going to have to ask you to just be patient and stay until the end of the talk. So we're going to start with some small definitions. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the concept of botnets. A botnet is a mixture of two words, robots and networks. And in the simplest of terms is an array of hundreds of thousands of hacked devices turned into zombies by hackers. Essentially what they do is that they hack hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of computers or different types of computers worldwide, and they have the capability of issuing one command to the entire network. So imagine you could have like 100,000 computers at your disposal and you issue one command, attack the ABSL website, God forbid. And it's true, it's happening. And this is how they work. Now, a thing that changed in the past few years was that initially they were using computers for that. So your personal computers, your Windows and Macs and so on and so forth. What changed was that they've discovered IoT. So, because IoTs essentially are small computers, and they've divided their focus. They're using computers for ransomware. So your Windows, Mac, Androids are being used to encrypt your data and ask for ransom money to give you your data back. It's used for phishing. And for those large botnets of small computers that they issue command, they're using smart devices. Now, just out of curiosity, can anybody tell me why they have made this shift in focus towards smart devices? Anyone at all? Sorry?
They have admin username and admin password.
First of all, that's very correct, unfortunately. And the other one, somebody here said there's no protection. You can install a security solution on your Windows, on your Mac, on your Android, on your iOS. You can install a security solution on almost anything that has like a display screen and support install software. However, you cannot install a security solution on your smart TV or on your camera or on so many other, actually, they're using sex toys. And it's one of those moments where your sex toy, not saying that you have one, however, there's many people that have them, and they're like, trust me, there's been a whole story on them. It's completely scientific and academic about how sex toys have been used as denial of service tools at a networking level, not physical. So strictly logical, software, networking, and they're being used alongside cameras and everything else to launch huge, massive attacks against companies. The largest one recorded was 640 gigabits per second of traffic against Dyn DNS in the US, taking down Twitter, taking down Netflix, taking down many companies. So botnets, we're going to learn, we've learned what a botnet is. We're going to learn a new word, honeypot. So honeypot is what we're using, one of the things that we're using in the cybersecurity industry to learn about cyber criminal behavior. Much like you would assume from the name, we're simulating vulnerable devices. We're presenting ourselves as vulnerable, innocent devices in the internet and allowing hackers to hack us, and then studying their behavior once they've infected our simulated devices. May they be Windows, Mac, Android, or cameras, or routers, or whatever. And we've identified 12 botnet families, a number of them, 89 botnets, many, many botnets. I'm not going to bore you with technical details. However, I'm going to show you that our honeypots were compromised 17 million times in a time span of about 2 or 3 months. We have them spread geographically all around the world, so from Brazil to New Zealand to, I think we even have some in Iceland. And they have been hacked 17 million times in about 2 months. And let me tell you why. So IoT is essentially this crazy space where, actually let me go back a bit and ask you guys, how many of you do not embrace the concept of smart house? How many of you don't have a smart house? How many of you live in a dumb house? Because you see, I've seen some hands. Many people tell me that they don't care about IoT security because they don't have smart devices. Smart devices don't necessarily mean that you need to purchase a $600 Roomba, which is a cool device, but cats love it. But it's not necessarily the beginning and the end of IoT. Your router is a smart device. It's actually one of the main targets of hackers. MikroTik routers have a number of vulnerabilities exposed just last week at DefCon in Kentucky, US. Most routers actually had vulnerabilities identified in the past few years. So anything that has a small operating system, a small interface, is a target for hackers. And many of these things that you see on the screen here have been identified as having issues. To give you a few examples, the smart Barbie doll. It's this insanely cool toy that is educational for your kids. It talks to them. It can teach them mathematics. It can teach them geography, history. I mean, the Barbie doll says, how are you today? How much is 2 + 2? And so on and so forth. And the kid answers. The Barbie doll can process the language and then understand whether or not the kid is right or wrong and act accordingly. It's an insanely cool gadget, like most of these things. However, in order to do that, it needs to listen to ambiental audio. Much like, I don't know if you've heard about the Samsung scandal 2 years ago, when people were complaining that Samsung was recording your living room and sending that data to a server in China. And it's true, it's happening. And it's not necessarily malicious. The reason they're doing that is that the TV itself, and actually it's happening with your iPhones and your Googles, Androids and stuff, because the language processing doesn't happen locally. That's why it needs an internet connection after you say, hey Siri, or okay Google, and so on and so forth. They listen for those initial keywords, and that's the only thing that they can process. After that, everything that you say is being sent to a cloud service that understands your language and then translates that into text, which is then being processed by all those other algorithms. So essentially, it's a normal thing to capture the audio and send it to a remote server. What's not normal, like the case of the Barbie doll, is for a remote third party to be able to hear the ambiental audio of all the Barbie dolls in the world. So obviously, they've issued patches and updates and so on and so forth. But for a small window of vulnerability, hackers were able to listen to what was happening in everybody's living rooms that had these dolls. And essentially, what we've discovered, we've started doing this research in IoT in about, I think it was 2013. We've identified that this is going to be a big thing, and we were confirmed to be correct in about 2016 when the Mirai botnet hit. And since then, we've analyzed many, many devices. And the results are simply disastrous, I'm afraid. And the vulnerabilities themselves are so subtle, many of them. I mean, admin is a good example. But we're going to go into detail about the major issues that we've discovered. And it's one of those educational things. Maybe after this you go home and wonder whether or not you knew about these things. So first of all, admin. Now, admin is one of those things that you can fix. You purchase a device, and then during the setup process, you change the password. That's great, and congratulations for doing that. However, what people don't know is that in many devices, vendors have placed administrative accounts, or what we call them backdoors. And it's a sad fact of life. We've seen many devices with these types of backdoors. Obviously, unfortunately, many from China. And many of these systems are embedded into other devices. So we've identified, for example, a type of firmware which was embedded in about 16 brands of devices. Under the hood, it was the same firmware and just different interfaces, different functionalities, but the operating system and the base system was shared amongst those 16 brands. And the brands spanned from Germany, US, Korea, China, and so on and so forth. Different types of devices, same underlying firmware, implicitly same vulnerabilities, and backdoor accounts. Next, we have devices that have weak or no encryption. Now, many people talk about encryption. For example, I'm not going to ask everybody to show a forest of hands, but at least a few. How many believe that encryption is important? Wow. Okay, so I'm going to do a random pick. So, you, sir. Why is encryption important? So you don't want other people to snoop on your communication, right? How often does that happen?
I don't know.
Okay, so it doesn't happen that often. It happens in any step when you communicate with a certain entity like Yahoo or like Google. Your device has to go through certain points across the internet to reach the Yahoo server. At any point during that journey, the traffic can be displayed by the ISP in general, or by the data centers, or in some particular cases where the person has to be next to you by a malicious attacker that hijacked your phone or your computer into seeing that traffic. So encryption is important, but the reason I was asking was that many people say that encryption is important, and encryption is the most important thing. I've seen devices when I ask them about, how is your security? What do you do about security? We have military-grade encryption. Okay. How is your application layer? We have military-grade encryption. Okay, I got it. That's nice. But how's your application layer? How's your cloud synchronization platform? How secure are those? We have military-grade encryption. So, and that's the beginning and the end of security for those devices. And it's like insanely important devices, industrial devices, SCADA devices, and so on and so forth. And we're seeing devices that, even though encryption is important, have no encryption. We've seen devices that send the users email and password. They're asking for those during the setup process. In order to send you email notifications, they're literally asking you for your Gmail account. It's stupid, but it happens. And it's like quite big brands, too. And if you give them your Gmail account, for example, or your corporate account, why not? They're going to synchronize their settings with the cloud platform. So when you set up the next one, you have an easier time setting it up, and you don't have to add those credentials again. In that synchronization process, they're not using encryption. Long story short, for those particular devices, you can actually hijack people's emails and passwords, credentials. Another example was our colleague when we were in Chisinau at some point, and he had this watch for his kid. And you can talk to the kid. The watch had a SIM card, and the child felt safer because the child could call the parents at any given moment, and the parent could see what the child is doing, where the child is, and so on and so forth. And just out of curiosity, I was bored. My speaking slot was about 4 hours ahead. So I told him that, I can hijack your phone without you knowing, your phone being in your pocket, and then I can sniff your data, and I can intercept your data. And what happened was that, well, I did that. I saw that the application that the guy was using for the mobile watch for their kid was sending his wife's, not his, because she was the master of his phone for whatever reason, name, email address, and password and phone number to the application servers. And one thing led to another. She had the same password for her Gmail account, and obviously with his approval, you could see absolutely everything in plain text. So not that cool. These are more sophisticated and more subtle things. So you can check for default credentials. You can change the passwords on your device. But then we come to a realm that's being vastly exploited called command injection or directory traversal. These are more sophisticated attacks, more difficult to detect without expert knowledge. Small plug here, whether you like it or not, now and 100 years from now, you will always need us for that expertise in security. You cannot escape it. It's not like the mafia. We're not blackmailing you or anything, but we are the experts in security, and you will always need us no matter what you innovate. And in return, we will try to stay ahead of everybody else. We will constantly innovate in defensive technologies and in understanding how cyber criminals work. Very old services, we're going to skip these parts. But this is important. Bad UX on firmware updates. There's many situations when people ask me, how do I know if a device is secure? Because I'm seeing articles about vulnerability this, MikroTik routers that, Huawei routers this, the small chip from China that hacked everybody. It was in the news a few days ago. Well, the only thing that's of paramount importance is the update process of devices. It's that simple. Inherently, everything is vulnerable. I'm not going to lie to you, even us. Amongst other things, I'm managing the bug bounty program in Bitdefender, in which we reward researchers that identify vulnerabilities in our infrastructure or our products. And we've spent quite a lot of money in the past 2.5 years. But it's an exceptionally useful program because, again, nothing is without vulnerabilities. We find about them, we patch them, we issue updates. It's like Schrödinger's vulnerability. Just because you haven't found it doesn't mean it's not there. Or if you found it today, it doesn't mean it appeared today. The vulnerability was there probably for years, and you just found out about it today. So the way a device does updates is very, very important. And let me ask you this. Your iPhones update in a very natural process. Most of you, I'm sure, have updated their iPhones to the latest version. Not all of you, but most of you. Your software updates in a natural fashion. It says, allow me to update, and you say, yeah, sure, okay. But how often do I update your routers? I'm going to say never, because I've done more research about the audience before I came here, and I know that none of you have updated your router software. Feel free to contradict me, but it's true. I also know none of you have updated your printer software. And some of you, if you have surveillance cameras, if they're decent surveillance cameras, you've updated those. But if they're Chinese stuff that you just access, you haven't updated those. So the way the update mechanism is designed is the most important part from a security standpoint of anything, not just device, of absolutely anything. Vulnerabilities are discovered constantly. They're patched. You should receive that update and fix it. What else? Port forwarding / UPnP, if you want to learn about this thing, is something very interesting. It essentially allows the device to tell your router to expose it in the internet without your knowledge. So essentially, when you purchase a device that you want to access from the internet, like a storage device where you keep your pictures, like a surveillance camera that you want to access from your mobile phone, what happens is that you either have to go into a router interface and very complicated process of setting up what's called port forwarding to allow that device access from the internet to the device, or the device can do that for you through this thing called UPnP or Universal Plug and Play. So this is the benign usage of UPnP. The malicious usage of UPnP is the device does that without needing it and without your knowledge. So you purchase a device, you set it up, you put it in your house, and the device tells your router, please expose me in the internet. The router does it, and you have no idea that your device is exposed in the internet. I mean, how many of you know how your home IP address looks if somebody looked at it from the internet? It's an exercise. You do. Well, good job. There's actually a search engine called Shodan just out of curiosity, you can look it up, which will tell you about all the cameras exposed in the internet or all the other types of equipment. We've even found the little modems in trucks and buses. You know, now they're forcing all the truck drivers and all the bus drivers to have this little gadget that tells the dispatch, you know, how fast they're going or if they're stopped or not. And well, many of those, as we've discovered, are accessible from the internet. You can actually connect to it, enter it at the operating system level, and interact with the goddamn truck. And it's insanely scary if you think about it. You can see the mileage, you can see the gas, you can see if it's stopped or not, where it is at that point. And all of that is accessible without any kind of credentials, not admin. You can just connect to it if you know the IP address, and you can find the IP address on that search engine I was mentioning earlier. So yeah. Okay, this is some shameless self-promotion. We're presenting one of our papers at DefCon, where we identified that it's about 250,000 cameras that can be hacked instantly right now. And we have 2 more papers in the works. One of them will be presented at DefCamp this year, and the other one probably at RSA next year. So, as impact. Well, given that you cannot install Bitdefender or whatever your poison is on your smart device, it's very difficult to defend against these types of attacks. You purchase devices, but you cannot actually secure them without some other type of solution. It can lead to data theft. And one of the things that I want to mention here is that many people, and arguably understandably so, don't really understand the concept of vulnerabilities. And it's not your job to do so, it's our job. However, it's presentations like this where we share some of that stuff with you. And to that point, the person that I've called out earlier with the names, with the words, if I may have a moment of your time. So one small exercise, it's a small attack. Yes. Of things that people don't know, they're not aware of, but they should be in terms of privacy. All of you care about privacy. I've seen you with stickers on your webcams and stuff. Yeah, sure. Yeah, but no stickers on your microphones, right? Because, yeah. Anyway, a small exercise is the concept, the Wi-Fi part. Many of you don't know that your devices are broadcasting all the Wi-Fi networks that you have ever connected to in real time. And it's passive information, and it's not illegal to see it, by the way. However, being that I'm a good Christian, or not, well, you know what I mean, I want to ask your permission to display.
Don't show the website.
It's not a website. It's just the wireless access points. So it's just the wireless access points that your phone knows, if that's okay with you. It's okay? So, Regia. So this information, yeah, I picked a special person for this, yeah. So for your information, it's fun, right? It's fun, I know. So for your information, this is publicly viewable information. You don't have to hack something to see it. Just so you know. You do not need to do anything illegal to see this. It's broadcasted freely by your devices from your pockets. And actually, you can actually trace a person's where that person has been, what hotels they visited. Not when, but what and where. So, yeah. Switching back to the slides. It can lead to data theft. Many devices store your personal information. My Amazon Fire Stick holds my credit card information and my Gmail account and obviously my Amazon account. And we've identified a method through which, if you're not careful enough, somebody can actually hijack into your Amazon Fire Stick. So many of these devices hold a lot of confidential information. Your security cameras, we've seen security cameras in people's bedrooms that could be hacked. It's incredible. Some might say it's fun to research, but it's also very, very dangerous. And of course, it can lead to IoT botnets. IoT botnets are these things that disrupt the entire internet at this point in time. Are probably one of the most dangerous things affecting the function of the internet at this point in time in this day and age. And it's also very profitable. What happens, the reason for these denial of service attacks is that essentially hackers are renting these botnets, right? So you can pay like $15 for a 5-minute attack against a website, depending on the size of that website. And you rent like 5,000 zombies for $15. You rent 100,000 zombies for $15,000. All you need is cash, and these guys will rent you the zombies in their botnet, and you can launch attacks against whoever you want. Whichever company displeases you, you can launch a huge attack against them. And it's a good business for the hackers. I mean, they've made, I think, about $3 billion in 1 year out of renting botnets alone. So not ransomware, not phishing, not stealing banking information, just from renting denial of service botnets to end users, or whatever you want to call them. So $3 billion in 1 year is not bad business. So it's booming, and they have a lot of interest in doing that. And again, a scary part is also that you will have no indication that it's happening. Somebody hacked your printer. How would you know? How could you tell, right? Except if you buy our stuff, we will tell you. APT stands for Advanced Persistent Threat, is the most insidious of threats. This is mostly for targeted attacks, for attacks against big profile persons or big profile companies. It's one of those things that will stay resident and not do any harm to you or your network, and it will stay there for years. We've seen an APT called the Flamer virus, which was resident in a network for 3 years until it actually started to steal data. With that being said, this was the longest time slot. I would like to thank the organizers for putting one of the longest time slots before lunch. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.